Welcome to the Ground and Pound Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined as always by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. It is a holiday weekend here in the U.S., but we are still trucking along here at Ground and Pound. Plenty to talk about. As always, we've got some gaming topics, we've got some fighting topics, but first, Scott, how are you doing, and how was your holiday weekend?
Well, I am working today, so not really much of a holiday for me, but yeah, I went to some barbecues. That was fun. But I would say today is actually still a pretty good day, and I'll tell you exactly why.
Okay.
Today, on this day that we are recording, which is Monday, is the 30th anniversary of the debut of Batman the Animated Series.
Oh my God, we are so old. Like I feel my body just disintegrating into dust right now.
See, I'm just jazzed up for it, actually. You're obviously stating this as some sort of, I guess, indictment of how old you are, right? But for me, I am now at the point where, oh my goodness, I was 7 when I watched Batman the Animated Series. My son is 7, my oldest. So I said, let's watch Batman the Animated Series today. What a perfect day to finally show him one of my favorite shows, one of the greatest shows. I would argue the highest quality children's programming of our childhood.
Wow. I was thinking all right, highest quality superhero cartoon, which I could get behind that. It's
I think you can get behind that too, but
it's between that or X-Men, right? Those are the two animated series that are probably the highest quality in terms of superhero content.
But even overall, I would actually dare to put Batman the Animated Series at the top.
I feel like I need to rewatch it in adulthood to fully appreciate the quality.
And I think you'll appreciate it more watching it in adulthood.
I've rewatched some shows like Hey Arnold and Rocko's Modern Life as an adult, and I'm like, oh, this is actually very cleverly written. And Wonder Years, for example, that's another one I've rewatched in adulthood a little bit. I haven't rewatched the entire series, but
granted, that one was actually made for people of all ages more. Well, I guess probably a little older more.
I rewatched the first episode and I was like, wow, this show is actually incredibly written.
Yes.
But
it is.
You've
not done that with Batman the Animated Series.
I've not rewatched it as an adult, and I would love to, but I just canceled my HBO Max. I think I'm going to actually, now this actually leads into a little bit of fight talk. I might subscribe to the Paramount Plus bundle, which has Showtime lumped in with it.
Yes, it does.
Because one, the NFL season starts just this week. And when you have a Paramount Plus active subscription, you can watch CBS Sports or CBS broadcasts live. Sure. So the NFL Plus thing that we talked about last week, total garbage. Looked into it. It's
super garbage.
It's just replays and preseason games live.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
I'm just no, I'm not paying for that. That should be the baseline. That should be okay, it's on maybe I pay $5 a month for that. I don't know, but yeah. I'm not paying for that. However, CBS, so I totally have ways to watch NBC and Fox broadcasts. I have ESPN Plus with a login for the ESPN channel, and then all I'm missing there is CBS. The thing that sucks, though, we talked about this last week. The thing that sucks is I just can't watch a Ravens game unless they're happen to be broadcast in my market, which is the dumbest thing ever.
I feel like they're on prime time a decent amount though, honestly. Usually,
they are.
Right?
I usually get maybe 4 or 5 games a season, which is
that's not terrible considering.
That's I guess we're coming up on that being a quarter of the season, but it's a third of the season.
Sure.
Between Monday night, Thursday night, and then just randomly, hey, this is on your
game
market.
of the week kind of situation.
Yeah. But with that, I get if I do subscribe to that, that's active now, right? The Showtime lumping in with Paramount Plus.
I don't know when that does activate or not. I know it's coming, if it's not already here. I didn't actually get to look at that yet, but I do know, and I think I know where you're heading with this. That does affect Bellator viewership because if you get Paramount Plus, you now have Showtime, which includes Bellator. And when I saw the announcement last week, I did tweet out the fact that, this means that Bellator can ostensibly reach a greater audience. They have much greater access to the general population of people watching fights or interested in watching fights. Someone like you who maybe was borderline before or maybe would tune in here or there, you were closed off from it because you were done with Showtime. No longer, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. But then again, like recently, I've barely had time to watch any UFC. So, like, I mean, I'm going to prioritize UFC over Bellator.
But they're usually different nights, is the thing.
They are.
So maybe some things just work out better for you. Maybe you're going to become more of a Bellator guy.
I don't see that happening.
All right, fair enough.
Well, the problem is with me, like, especially with this last fight card starting, noon or something like that. It was something around that. Like, it was midday. It was a midday start because it was taking place in Paris.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to watch that. I don't have any plans in the evening. And then I realized it was a midday start, and I had already committed to going to the Renaissance Festival.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought we talked about that.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I missed all the fights live, and then I went back and rewatched a little bit of the co-main, and I watched the highlights of the main event.
I don't care about that. I want to know about the jousts. What was going on at the jousts at this Renaissance Fair?
I did not get to see
or the melee. Is there a melee?
I saw a weapons demonstration by a band of Vikings, which was kind of cool.
Okay.
It was very Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And then I was pulled up on stage, which was growing up, that was my biggest fear, right?
Oh, really?
Like a musical production company would come to your high school or your middle school, and then they start running out into the crowd and pulling kids up on stage to do stuff with them. That was always my biggest fear growing up. So my girlfriend and I were at Renaissance Festival, and like one of her friends was performing at the Renaissance Festival, and like this like group of singers. And I didn't realize like there was like a play aspect to it. So they'd like do a few lines of dialogue, then they'd all break into song, and then they'd go back and like continue the story. And so I'm just sitting there next to my girlfriend, and they decide it's time to pull somebody up on stage, and they make a beeline straight for me.
Nice.
And I'm like, all right, let's do it, whatever. So I'm just standing there awkwardly, and like it's like this. It starts off as like a serenade. It's like two women like kind of serenading me almost, and then it does the classic flipping of the table, and it turns into hey, let's embarrass this guy. So I mean, it wasn't like embarrassing, but like I could see why some people, like guys in particular, would be embarrassed because they're like, oh well, now you have to put on this like pink apron with like flowers all over it and like tie it behind your back, and now you have to like dust off things.
So embarrassing.
But like they made it intentionally very like, we're gonna put this ridiculous outfit on you and make you like perform household chores in front of everybody.
Yeah, that's the worst. Men are not allowed to do chores.
I know,
that's
but
so
like
stupid.
And the other one, actually, my girlfriend did get pulled up on stage as well. But like, I just stood there awkwardly for most of it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here.
Because I mean, you weren't necessarily rehearsed, yeah.
Yeah, but my girlfriend, being the former theater kid that she is, was like, she was all in it when she got pulled up on stage. She
totally handed up, yeah.
Yeah, she was like, kind of like, because it was like, the whole thing with her was like, it was three guys fighting over her. So she was like, like going back between them and like, oh, who should I choose? Like she was playing it up perfectly. Whereas I was like, I've never been in like a actual play in my life, let alone a musical. But yeah. And then, unfortunately, right as I got home was when the main event, I was like, I'm going to avoid all spoilers. I'm going to get on there. And as I was walking in the door of my house, I opened up Instagram just out of habit, because that's really what my phone is a habit at this point. And I
think
saw,
most people could agree, yeah.
Who's the guy who does those really hilarious animations in the MMA space?
Hilarious animations.
God, it's Muhammad, I think. God, I don't know, but he does like the hilarious animations where it's like, when he'll take like actual audio clips and he'll animate like the cartoons to like the clips, like when Dana White will say something, and then like he'll have like a animated version of like Kamaru Usman come out and like slap him or something like that.
It's not ringing bells.
It's very funny, but he has a ghost club, like when somebody gets knocked out cold. And like Ben Askren was the founding member after the Jorge Masvidal knee, and now every time anybody gets knocked out cold, especially like a big name, he'll post something that says "Welcome to the Ghost Club," and he'll post like a ghost animation of that person. And I opened it up, and it just said "Welcome to the Ghost Club, Tai Tuivasa," and I went, "No!"
So wait, you got home after it was done, you said. I thought you said you got home just in time.
I got home as it was finishing.
I see.
So I'm assuming
he turned it around in like 2 minutes? What?
He must have had it queued up or something already.
Okay.
Like he probably creates these like whenever there's a big fight just so he can post it or at a time. But yeah, I got home like, kind of like shortly after the main event had ended. So he probably had it all queued up or something. But it was, and I was like, damn it. Because not only did the guy that I wanted to win lost, but I found out through that.
Yeah. Now, I think probably all fight fans have been spoiled. If they're the ones who can't possibly be, in front of the TV literally at all times. I feel like even Caposa has missed things, right? But
no, I don't believe so. I think that guy's just a supernatural entity that he can watch everything. It's unbelievable, that guy.
His process is impressive. I've been told a little bit about how he watches that. I mean, he doesn't think anything about what he does is impressive, but I'm just like, man, this is wild. This is crazy. But no, it is unfortunate you got spoiled that way, but it is a good fight. I don't know if you got the chance to actually go back and watch the fight since then, sir, but
I've only watched the highlights of that fight.
Okay, all right. So it's a good fight. It honestly, especially for heavyweights go, what were your expectations? What did we have? I think I had a 3 on this event, both the main event and the undercard. And I think you had a 3.5. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I think so.
You would think we would verify these things, but we just don't. So we're not.
By the way,
we fired our staff. They usually would tell us that, but we had to let people go.
I was I was looking up the name of the guy because I wanted to give him proper credit. Sure. The animator. I hope I pronounced this right. Muhahed Fudailat.
Okay.
Mojahed Fudailat. Look him up on YouTube.
This is IG, right?
YouTube or Instagram. Like he posts all of them on both, but like he has a good one for like Alex Pereira knocking out Sean Strickland. He does a lot of stuff like that where it's like he almost like recreates the fights in like comical manner, but also uses like audio clips of like the trash talk leading up to it, or like his favorite is one of his favorites is like Dana White. Like a fighter will slap him and he'll be like, "That's effing illegal." But yeah, I'm sorry. Continue.
No. Anyway, so yeah, the fight. It's. I think we had like expectations of. I had a 3 and you had a 3.5, right? As far as it wasn't expectations. More like our interest level, right? Yeah. How excited we were. I think this definitely went way past what I was hopeful for, or went up to where I was hopeful for. I didn't really think it would get there though. That's why I was more like, I'm kind of a 3. You just never know. But it ended up being like a really good heavyweight fight. And there just aren't a ton of those. I think I've said it on this program, on our show here, how I'm very much in favor of 5-minute heavyweight fights. If they don't finish in 5 minutes, I don't want to see more of it. Although I always will point out that if it's top 10 guys, it's very typically, it ends up being much better. So Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis notwithstanding. But
oh my God, don't even remind me of that fight.
We don't need to go deep into that one. No, this was much better than that. It was a really good fight. I think if you get the chance to watch the fight as a whole, it was entertaining. It was everything you'd really. This is what heavyweight headliners really ought to be. Sometimes they're just like, here, let's put 2 heavyweights in there, like Augusto Sakai against some guy, right? No one cares. This was sorry, Augusto, but it's just the way it is. This was definitely a main event caliber main event. It was honestly a championship level fight too, in terms of what was on offer between 2 of the top guys in the division, and it lived up to that way. I thought it was one of the better fights of the year. I wouldn't say fight of the year contender, but it might be. Maybe I'm not remembering something obvious right now, but it might be the best heavyweight fight of 2022.
Yeah, I mean, have there been a whole lot of great heavyweight fights so far?
Not usually.
By the way,
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Poor Augusto Sakai catching a stray there.
Sorry, man.
It was like I was listening to an MMA fighting podcast last night while I was playing this review game, and it was I want to give a shout out. It's Jed Meshu's "Damn They Were Good," where they look back on like the careers of legends in the sport, and he was doing one on Daniel Cormier. And they were talking about how he just gave Corey Anderson like the ultimate stray bullet when Jimmy Manuwa was trying to call him out. And he's like, "You knocked out Corey Anderson. Nobody gives a shit." And it's just like, wow. Like, yeah, he really did like decimate Corey Anderson in like complete like passive fashion. It was amazing.
It's pretty messed up too because Corey Anderson is legitimately one of the best light heavyweights on the planet right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was years ago. He wasn't at that level yet, but I think now we all kind of recognize him for what he is, which is, he probably is the best light heavyweight in Bellator now. We all saw what was happening in that fight against Vadim Nemkov. They're going to have the rematch because it ended so weird and everything, but I think Nemkov's now should be looked at as the underdog in this fight, I would have to think. But yeah, I mean, that definitely one of the better fights of the year, especially at heavyweight. The co-main, did you get to watch that?
I watched some of it, yeah.
Okay, between Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori, where Whittaker looked terrific as well. I mean, no one really takes the fight to Marvin Vettori that way, that it actually worked out for him. So it was really impressive to see.
Yeah, I would think that, like, this has got to be another one of those things where it's like, yes, we've reestablished what we've known all along, and that is that Israel Adesanya is number one and Robert Whittaker is number two, and then everybody else is so far below them.
Yeah, this is almost like a it's not a 1-to-1, but it's a close comparison. I think it's Mighty Mouse Johnson at number one, and then Joseph Benavidez at number two, where we know distinctly which one of them should be ranked number one, but we also know that no one comes remotely close to number two.
See, I went to featherweight with Volkanovski and Holloway.
Okay.
And
that one also makes sense.
Yeah.
That also makes that's a good comparison. I think that both of them good ones. We see this more often than not, and I feel like it's just the nature of the sport still being in development, right? We're still seeing the sport really come together and coalesce and find parity, I guess, in the level of talent, right? So sometimes we're just going to get a couple of transcendent guys that no one else can really catch up to, and I think that's what we have here at middleweight.
Yeah, I mean, if Israel Adesanya does win against Pereira, do you think Whittaker should follow through with what he was talking about and just go up to 205?
I don't see any reason why he shouldn't go up to 205, to be honest. And I mean, the reason being, if he is not going to get the opportunity to fight for a title, like, what is he fighting for necessarily? If he's content to just knock off guys, then that's fine. But I don't think that's how he's built. 205, he would be a little small, I think. Yeah. But I always love the idea of men and women in this sport not cutting weight, moving away from that. So if he's happier and healthier at that weight class, and I'm sure he probably isn't going to just let himself go, he's just not going to cut weight anymore, or
be able to put on some muscle.
Maybe he'll put some muscle on, yeah, but hopefully not the John Jones 3 years out level.
Who?
Yeah, I know. He's one of the greatest of all time. He doesn't fight anymore.
Former MMA athlete John Jones.
Former MMA athlete / well, he's got a lot of, yeah. Anyway, no, it was honestly super impressive because even Israel Adesanya, who has now fought 8 full rounds against Marvin Vettori, never looked as good against Vettori as Robert Whittaker did. Now that, MMA math obviously doesn't work, but there's something to be said about looking more impressive against common opponents that at least says, hey, look at this guy. Like this is not just cut, chopped liver or something like that, right? He is absolutely a different fighter in the sense that you could really picture him being the number one guy in the whole wide world if we just didn't have, if Israel Adesanya said, man, I'm just going to be a kickboxer. I don't need MMA. If he had never come on over here, is Robert Whittaker the champion for the last few years? Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, I think he'd have to be, right?
He probably might be. I mean, he hasn't lost to anybody else, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't see anybody else in the field really beating him. Like, maybe Pereira would catch him or something. But then does Pereira even get signed to the UFC if Israel Adesanya isn't at the top of? Probably
not. That probably in that timeline that we're talking about,
butterfly
the timeline. It's not yet the butterfly flag. We're not seeing that happen. I'd be interested to see if they, some of these guys who are a little more on the come up, I guess, could have some success. I'm thinking of someone like Andre Muniz, who I realistically see as someone who could be the champion. Like if you asked me who is not the champion today, could you picture being the champion 2 years from now? My pick at middleweight would be Andre Muniz.
Oh, so just for middleweight.
Yeah, we're just talking middleweight.
Let me look at the middleweight rankings here.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the thing with Muniz is just every time he goes out there, he does something that I think is really impressive. You know, I definitely go all the way back to the Jacare win.
Oh,
when
yeah.
he broke his arm and retired him. Because that was not a result I was expecting.
Nobody,
by any
I mean,
stretch.
Come on, how could you?
He brings a different look to that. If he can get to that Adesanya fight, and I don't think he's that far off, because realistically, he just kind of has to beat somebody in the way and have the right timing of like, well, they're looking for a contender. You're it. I think he's got the skill set that could actually give Adesanya some problems, because it's something that Adesanya doesn't see as often, where he's got a little bit of striking, but he really can take it to the ground and he can absolutely finish you down there. So
yeah,
that would be fascinating.
Looking at the top 15, I think Muniz is by far the most likely candidate to give Israel some problems.
Yeah, that's what he looks like to me. Exactly.
I mean, aside from Pereira, if he
and
does
I'm not
in
even,
fact.
Yes, yeah. Obviously, there's a very real threat here in Alex Pereira that he's going to have to get through, and if he doesn't, I mean, they're probably just immediate run it back again, I would think, unless there's some sort of craziness there that like it's just so like one-sided beatdown. Who knows? I just can't see that happen. I think it's gonna be a fun fight regardless. But yeah, there's just not a whole lot of guys at middleweight that I think offer something very different from what we've seen against Adesanya, and I think Muniz is interesting in that sense. So I'm not saying that 2 years from now he will be the middleweight champion, but if you're making me pick somebody who's not Adesanya 2 years from now, time has elapsed, he's my pick.
Who do you think Whitaker should fight next?
God.
I heard again, shout out to MMA Fighting, and I'll tell you after you give me your pick what they said, because I forget which member of that staff it was, but they posited a very interesting pick, regardless of the outcome.
You know, I think my pick is going to be, and it's probably not what they're saying, my pick would be if Pereira loses to Israel Adesanya, make that fight.
So they said Pereira regardless of the outcome. So if Pereira wins, put Whitaker in there. If Pereira loses, put Whitaker in there. Just give him Pereira no matter the outcome.
Look, I can get behind that, but at the same time, I just know that if it's even reasonably close of a fight that Pereira wins, they're going to put Adesanya back in there. They're just going to.
Almost certainly.
A lot of time, and realistically, I think they understand the scenario of, well, if he wins and then Whitaker wins, then they probably have to put Adesanya back in there very quickly. And do they want to actually do that fight yet? So I think ultimately people that think along the lines of that and in the UFC's let's say brain trust or whatever, I think they're probably going to say maybe that's not the right way to go. But I could get behind it if it happened. For me, watching at home, I think that's wonderful. I would have a good time with that.
Speaking of Pereira, have you seen these pictures that have been posted of him and Dominic Reyes?
Yeah, and I saw the one where he was standing next to the Eiffel Tower. And he was much bigger than the Eiffel Tower, and
I think that was
everyone's been having a lot of fun with this picture. Yeah,
but yeah, like he is a huge dude, and
he looks so much bigger than Dominic Reyes, who is definitely a 205-pounder,
a big 205-pounder.
He's a solidly framed guy. I think probably he has a lot of because he's so thin, like a lot of it is just kind of like bone and all that stuff, right? You can't cut that.
So 5 days ago, Pereira posted his weight on Instagram.
Right. And
he was at 226.2 pounds 5 days ago, which is down from 232 pounds. So he's dropped, what is that, 7 pounds, 6 pounds? Yeah, he's dropped 6 pounds over the course of the last month, basically. He's still got a ways to go to make that 185. And I know a lot of that will come off on that final week.
A lot of that's going to come off on that.
But still,
he's probably going to come to the cage at if I had to guess, I bet you he's going to be 205 pounds. He'd probably be close to that when he comes to the cage.
He's got about 2 months left to cut.
Yeah, I think he'll get there.
I mean, yeah, sure. I'm sure he will get there.
Is he dieting that heavily now? We don't know what's going on. There's a lot of factors we just don't have. So I have no reason to believe he won't actually get there until we get much closer and let's say maybe it's a problem. But yeah.
He's a big guy regardless.
He certainly is. He looks bigger than the guy who's a weight class above him. And that's what's ridiculous.
You could almost say the same thing in that picture that surfaced with Johnny Walker and Hamzat. Did you see those pictures?
Did I?
Like, Johnny Walker looks a little bit thicker than Hamzat.
I think I did. Yeah,
but
they're both like
Hamzat's
screaming or whatever.
Yeah, Hamzat still looks like comparable in size to Johnny Walker, which is.
But you know
wild.
what? He is definitely distinctly thinner, right?
Yeah.
He's just a larger framed person, but I think he definitely doesn't have as much. Johnny Walker has a lot of meat on him. You know.
Yeah.
You could definitely make a bunch of steaks off of that guy.
It just.
I'm not advocating for cannibalism. I'm just saying.
I mean, this sounds very similar.
Anti-cannibalism. I am.
This podcast is officially anti-cannibalism.
That's where I went on record and said I am anti-cannibalism.
That's where we draw the line.
Not a big Army Hammer guy.
What other fights on this card should I go back and check out?
Should you go back and watch? Well, it won't take you very long to watch Abis Magomedov do his work against Dustin Stoltzfus. I can tell you that.
See, in 19 seconds.
Yeah, you could watch that while I'm talking and going on a rant here or something like that. You'd finish it pretty darn quickly. That's one. Definitely watch the entirety of Robert Whittaker's work. I think that's a really good fight. Most of these fights, honestly, are not hyper competitive fights. But there's some solid performances in there, and I think Whittaker obviously really shined. I don't know that I would go crazy on watching every single one of these, but yeah, I think the heavyweight fight most definitely, Robert Whittaker most definitely, and yeah, maybe a couple of the finishes. That's probably the extent.
How'd my guy Nathaniel Wood look at featherweight?
Oh, that's another one actually. He looked fantastic, sir, and totally defied my expectations. I really thought that. I thought that Charles Jourdain was going to win. You know, I see two talented strikers, and I see someone who's definitely the bigger man. I thought he was the bigger man anyway, and Wood, he looked just fine in there, and he looked fantastic against Jourdain, and that's not easy to do. Jourdain really can take it to people. We saw what he did against Shane Burgos in the third round after he was losing the first two rounds of that fight, depending on how you see round one, I believe it was, but. Man, he just looked incredible in their Wood. And that's another, I love to see guys that do well at the higher weight, like go up in weight, find success at a more comfortable, safer, healthier weight. I want to see much more of that. So I'm always hopeful that, when things like that happen, one fighter at home or a couple fighters at home would be like, man, maybe I should stop cutting all that freaking weight.
I mean, Nathaniel Wood is the poster child for somebody who probably should have gone up in weight sooner. Because remember that picture he posted? I think this was back in March, and his fight ended up getting scrapped because he had some health complications, I believe. Right. But yeah, he posted that video of him like just at like the peak of his weight cut, and he was looking like 0% body fat. Basically,
yeah, he looks like a paper vascular. Cut would have just murdered him.
Yeah. Like I've never seen somebody so vascular in my life as that video.
And it was kind of scary. So, but yeah, it's definitely you want to see guys that when they go through that, it's like, man, there's a better way. Like you can actually go up and you just win. And you'd be like Charles Jourdain, like we're talking about someone who's kind of borderline ranked, he's not that far away from getting some really big opportunities at a marquee weight class here. I've liked Nathaniel Wood for a while. But now I think he's going to be much healthier, and I think he'll actually have a chance to really, make some waves. He might be able to fight more often now because he doesn't have to think, man, he might be able to take short notice opportunities. You couldn't do that with that weight class. No. I mean, that's the thing that the UFC loves. They love these, and I don't love that they love this, but they do love guys that will take fights on short notice, and now he might be able to even do that.
Cowboy was their man for a long time because of that. But yeah, I've been high on Nathaniel Wood since he made his UFC debut, and I was like, all right, this guy's pretty skilled. He seems to have kind of what it takes, but then he suffered some road bumps over the course of his bantamweight career, and now he's up at 145, and I'm hoping that is kind of like the shot in the arm that his career needs to kind of really get kickstarted. Because I thought he had what it took to like at least make it into the rankings, maybe kind of climb up the ladder there. And I think it's going to be an easier path, quite candidly, in featherweight than it would be at bantamweight.
Absolutely. But yeah, I don't know that I would necessarily send you to watch many more of these. Benoit Saint-Denis looked terrific, I would say. What about that's not going to take you too long to watch either. I think it goes a little more than a round. Arguably didn't need to go past the first round, but yeah, he looked really good. Roman Kopylov had a good knockout. I'll just spoil that for you.
What about
It's
Nasruddin Imavov? Because that's another guy that like that's a name that popped out on the middleweight rankings of like, all right, well, maybe he's looking pretty good lately. Like when we were talking,
he looked good for 2 rounds here. He started to kind of Buckley came out really strong, I would say, but he'd already lost the fight at that point, and he wasn't getting finished. So it was yeah. I think he looked fine. He looked fine. All the French fighters, by the way, won. The French. He's technically a French fighter, but their consideration because he trains in France. That was kind of their cutoff. They're like, okay, you're French, you train here, which is the same thing as saying, oh yeah, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she's American because she trains an American top team. But whatever, we'll go with it. They all won. They all won in France, which I guess if you were a bettor and you'd put together some sort of parlay on all the French fighters, you probably did pretty well.
I did see that was like a pretty high parlay, like a high yielding parlay.
Is that right?
I forget what I was looking at or listening to, and it was brought up of like, oh, if you put down like, I think it was like a plus 700 something.
Oh, that's pretty good.
But yeah, so that would have been a good bet. But yeah, I don't know if there's really much else, but we need to really talk about with this card.
I would say that I was very impressed with the passion of the French fans. This is a new market for the UFC. The Bellator has been there, I believe, now twice. So this isn't necessarily new to, high-level North American MMA, but this was the first time they had UFC over there. The first time they had, let's say, a real world-class type of fighter in Cyril Gane come over there, especially one of their own. And I think they did a really good job of embracing them. The Italian fans traveled well to Paris for this one as well. You heard them during Alessio Di Chirico and Marvin Vittori, who both lost, of course. All the French fighters won. All the Italian fighters lost.
What about that Australian contingency?
I guess is it a mixed bag? No, I think they all lost. Yeah,
Whitaker.
Oh, that's right, Whitaker. Yeah, okay, sorry, my bad. So yeah, mixed bag, like I said.
So actually, before we do move on, the main event here. Mm-hmm. What is what were the stakes for this? Was it just who remains in this muddled title picture at this time?
Kind of. I mean, it almost had the feel of an unofficial interim championship fight because of the way it was kind of promoted and the fact that these are the two top contenders who are basically active fighters at this point.
Yeah.
We have the champion is injured. Can't help that. And then Cyril Gane was number one. We're just going UFC rankings here. Number two, I believe, is still Stipe, but Stipe has not fought in a year and a half now, not since he lost to Francis Ngannou.
He's approaching retirement status as well.
Yeah, I get the feeling, and this is just my read on it. I don't know anything, more, but my read on it is the guy is not coming back until you make something interesting to him, which is probably money and maybe opponent, but probably
championship money. Or John Jones.
Yeah, realistically, and I think it would take money, right, to do that too, because he seems like a guy who's pretty happy with everything else that's going on. He's probably made all his money, but he's like, oh, I could do it again if you told me for more money, That's what I get out of Stipe Miocic, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's a great way to do it because he seems happy. He likes to be a firefighter. He likes to just do that. He's living my son's dream, being a firefighter and driving a fire truck. Fighter. That's what my kid wants to do. He just wants to drive the fire truck.
Imagine being Stipe's kid. What does your dad do? And he's like, oh, he's in finance. What does your dad do? He beats people up and saves lives for a living.
To be fair, his daughter and I believe he has a son on the way, or maybe already the son was born. They're little, so they don't know. But in a few years, he'd be like, my dad used to do that.
My dad could beat your dad's ass. And it's like, no, he couldn't. No, literally. Go watch it on ESPN Plus.
Do you remember Cole Conrad?
Yeah.
They did. It was Shaheen Al-Shatti did a story on him. They found him and tracked him down, wrote about him, what happened to him. For those who don't know, he was the Bellator heavyweight champion pretty much from the start, more or less, very early on. And he retired undefeated. He just walked away from the sport, never came back. He was training at the time with Brock Lesnar. So they had two of the top heavyweights in the world basically in this one camp here. But Shaheen tracked him down and he hasn't told his kids that he used to fight. They don't know at all. He's like, I don't know where the belt is. I don't know where my NCAA stuff is. It's in a box somewhere.
Isn't he a farmer now?
No, he's not. He's not a farmer. He trades in dairy securities and stuff.
Oh, okay. See, I
Like
think
more or
that's
less
where
that.
I think I was thinking like he was like a dairy farmer.
No. It is related to dairy, but no. It sounds like he sits behind a computer most of the day, and he's like, people offer him. What was it? Shaheen wrote about it. It was like, I guess like grasshopper proteins, and he's like, listen, I don't think I could sell this. If you could sell it to me, if you could sell it to anybody, you're gonna make a lot of money. But yeah. It's that kind of stuff. He's thinking more along the lines of that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it was just fascinating to me that there would be somebody out there who just doesn't even want to talk about it with his kids. His kids don't even know. They haven't like gotten on the internet and found out about their dad yet. No one in the town has just been like, hey, remember your dad used to kick people's ass for a living. Never happened. That's so weird.
Just wiped from everybody's memory.
It's a great story. Shaheen is one of my favorite writers.
Oh, he's an amazing
in this
writer.
Space. I love Shaheen.
He does those.
He has terrible taste in Pokemon Generation 1 starter Pokemon, though. That's the real problem, is he's like a Bulbasaur guy, and that's wrong.
I know a lot of people who are Bulbasaur people.
Nah, he's wrong. And they're wrong.
I don't think there's a wrong answer, Gen 1.
I do. I think it's got to be Squirtle. It just has to be Squirtle.
But I'm a Charmander guy, so...
That's fine. You can be wrong, too. I'm a big Squirtle fan.
Well, Squirtle was actually the hard mode. Or no, he was easy. Bulbasaur was easy mode.
Bulbasaur is easy mode, which is why you especially can look down on Mr. El Shati.
Because, yeah, he was super effective against both the first gym leaders.
Yeah. That was lame.
So let's wrap up UFC Paris, because I want to get onto this pay-per-view. But, I mean, The only name that I could really see for Cyril Gane, because, again, Francis is injured. He just knocked out Tai Tuivasa. And then Tom Aspinall is injured. He just beat Derek Lewis in pretty one-sided fashion. The only name that's in this mix that really makes sense, I think, is Curtis Blades.
Curtis Blades makes sense even independent of the fact that the way he won over Tom Aspinall was, let's say not a victory in the sense that he beat him. It was a freak injury that just happened, and he happened to lose the fight, right? Aspinall did. Curtis Blades is most definitely qualified to fight for a title. I would actually be perfectly okay at this point with them, unless, look, if Francis Ngannou is coming back in the next 4 months, okay, I'm really okay with that. Like if Francis Ngannou can beat the chance for an interim heavyweight belt, interim heavyweight championship fight, then fine, don't make it. But if they kind of need something, I'm really actually okay with it at this point. It's been a while. We're not really necessarily knowing exactly when. And this situation is also especially strange just because of the whole contract situation. We're wondering whether he's trying to get out or whatever, who knows. So I'm very much okay with the idea of Cyril Gane and Curtis Blades deciding who is the interim champion.
Yeah, I think I would be all about that. But I also believe that the UFC is probably holding out hope that we will get an interim title fight on that Stipe John Jones fight. I think that's probably the way they're going, right?
They're definitely from all signs are pointing to they really want Jones and Stipe to fight, I think in December. I don't buy it. I just I'll believe it when I see it is really where I'm at. I don't care what is being reported. It just seems like everyone's really hoping for something that, we haven't seen any signs of it happening yet. I'll believe it when I see it.
That makes sense, because nothing has made sense with John Jones and Stipe Miocic lately.
I think what it was the joke is that after Cyril Gane's performance, that John Jones was like, maybe I'll just go back to lifting weights.
Yeah, I saw something where it was just like, all right, well, we've got to get like somebody in there, and it's like, well, none of the top heavyweight contenders are fighting. Like the entire, like, this is as bad of a logjam, it feels like, than like lightweight back in like when Conor was still the champion. And everybody was kind of.
I think it's more temporary though. I think this one can actually recover well because there just aren't as many guys that you really think of as like really top heavyweights. Whereas before it was like lightweight, there was just so many guys, and there still are so many guys that you could picture being champion.
But there are a lot of parallels because, Francis is angling for a boxing match against an all-time great boxer. And
There's
that's
always someone angling for a boxing match because
of
that's where money is. There's no
Yeah.
money in the there's not no money in the UFC. It's not that, but there's not life-changing money when you're a top fighter if you're in the UFC. It's like, yeah, you can make some good money, but man, you can go next level in boxing. And that's what the UFC doesn't want.
You know who else is probably angling for a boxing match?
Conor McGregor?
Nate Diaz, Segway King.
Well, him too. Yes, him too.
UFC obviously. 279.
yes. Good segue. And man, let me ask you this. Let's just cut right to the chase. Are you interested in this fight between Nate Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev? Are you actually interested as a fan?
No.
I didn't think so. I don't know many people who are not like stands for one of the guy or the other, mostly Nate, that would really be all that excited for this fight. So I'm really wondering just how many people actually are going to put their money down to watch this fight. Are you going to put your money down to watch this fight?
I mean, it sucks because I have a minor interest in every single one of the fights on the main card. Like, I think Johnny Walker, formerly a fun fighter.
Iwan Kutilaba is a madman, though, so he kind of makes this.
Yes. Yeah. I'm hoping he brings it out of him.
He's just a wild man.
I'm very high on Irene Aldana, so I'm hoping that, it's a good performance out of her. I think Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez is low-key the most interesting fight on this main card.
I love that one. I think that's the fight of the night potential. We should, by the way, point out Irene Aldana's fighting Macy Chiasson. So
yes.
Everyone knows.
And then the Leech versus Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson remains one of my favorite fighters, but I don't know how I feel about this fight. Like, it seems like
it's a weird fight.
It seems like they're just putting him on there at a 170 in case there's like something weird with the main event.
I don't know that I feel that way. I look at this fight and I see potential for high violence because Tony Ferguson, obviously lately he's just not had as much success overall, but he's a violent man.
And he looked good in that first round against Chandler.
He did. And then he lost very violently. So yes. A lot of violence there, right? Li Jingliang is like always violence, whether he's on the wrong end or the right end. Like something violent is going to happen. And I think this is just a fight that I see so many fights on this card that are like, that's going to be fun. Well, that's going to be fun. Oh, that'll be fun. But the main event, I don't see it being very fun. I beyond some sort of strangeness where Chimaev's like, no, I'm going to engage him on the feet and like just try to like make it a fight, make it interesting. If he plays around, then he might get messed around. But on the whole, this really just looks like a fight that Chimaev has made to send Nate Diaz out with maybe just a little bit of a damaged brand in the UFC's. I don't think they're hoping for it, but like they're hoping for the other way, where Chimaev actually gets a lot of shine off of beating Nate Diaz, and they can promote that forever. Oh, he beat Nate Diaz. For the casuals.
This is one of those cards that even if it was like a lower interest title fight, it would have benefited greatly from having that at the top. Like, have Chimaev Diaz on the poster still, but have like, maybe a Valentina Shevchenko title defense or something.
Like let's say if they were able to have somehow moved Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev up a month.
Well, I mean,
they're going to be fighting in Abu Dhabi, or like Aljamain Sterling and TJ Dillashaw, same kind of thing.
Those are both marquee.
Maybe they moved one of them off.
Those are both marquee.
But even at that, like just there's actually a fight there that they could have just shifted. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
probably it didn't work out for the men. I imagine.
I'm just saying those are both high interest. I would like those could both buoy a pay-per-view on their own. I'm saying like, I don't know.
The funny thing is though, they don't typically put bantamweight title fights at the top. That's true. Just something they don't do
because they always do it by
a very rare occurrence.
They always do it by weight usually.
I think Aljamain Sterling has only headlined like one event ever, if I'm not mistaken. I'm actually going to double check that now. But it wasn't while he was champion, and Peter Yan has never headlined, by the way.
I mean, I doubt that the UFC is like super excited to put Carla Esparza as a pay-per-view headliner, but like even something like Esparza Zhang Weili, that would have done. I feel like that would have increased my interest just enough to get me like more excited to purchase this pay-per-view.
But for you specifically, I don't think a lot of people feel that way. I know a lot of people who are extremely anti Carla Esparza.
Or give me Shevchenko Santos too.
And I can confirm, by the way, Aljamain Sterling has not headlined for the UFC ever.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And that's the point. That's my point. They never put bantamweight at the top. Imagine if they just did something that would be out of character for them, which is put that at the top of this, right? Which I know you like, but nonetheless, still very rare.
Yeah. But I don't know. Like, Chimaev Diaz is an incredible co-main event for a pay-per-view, but it's a hard sell for me as a main event.
I'm going to watch this one, of course. This is my job. I cover the sport. And I am interested to see what kind of happens from this fight, like what actually happens from Chimaev Diaz. Because if some funniness happens, it could be at least an entertaining show. But yeah, I'm keeping my expectations in check. All right, so I think probably we've kind of talked about this one ad nauseum at this point. I don't know how much more we can really add, but where are you at in terms of, is it worth $75 or not? Let's put the official, mark on it. Is this worth $75?
It's very borderline. I am debating it myself,
Yeah.
I want to see all of these fights in some capacity or another, but like, I don't know if I want to see them all in the amount of 75 or after taxes $80. Like, again, I feel like it's just missing one piece of the puzzle from being a solid main card. But then you look ahead at the other, like UFC 280, 81, like they're much stronger cards. And like, when you're trying to do the thing of like, all right, we're going to very recognizable names, very popular fighters at the top of this card, but no title defense or no title fight, which, they've done with only a select few fighters. They've done it with McGregor and Poirier. They've done it with Masvidal and Colby. And they've done it with Masvidal and Diaz. So like, it's like this carousel of like 6 or 7 fighters they think they can headline without having an actual title. They had the BMF title with Masvidal and Diaz, but like with an actual recognized UFC title on the line, like there's only a handful of fighters that they do that with. And this just doesn't feel like these are both fighters I think they could do that with, but against each other, I just don't know. Because
it's a terrible matchup. It's just styles make fights, and this doesn't make a very stylistically interesting fight.
Like I mentioned with Ferguson, like I kind of thought like maybe he was brought on as a backup in case like Chimaev couldn't make it to the U.S., which he's in the U.S. now, so that's kind of defunct now. But
Sure.
Like, if it was Ferguson Diaz, that's an infinitely more compelling matchup.
Imagine if they were able to make this fight together, and I think we know why it doesn't make any sense right now, or why it couldn't have come together. But Nate Diaz, Colby Covington.
Yeah, that would
have been an interesting fight.
That would be a more fun fight. But still, I don't think I would. If there was the pay-per-view headline by that, I don't think I would buy that one. I think I
can understand that.
I'm actually more likely to buy Chimaev Diaz than I am Covington Diaz.
I can totally understand why.
But I'd probably, if it depends on what I have going on, because like, this is not one of those ones where I'm like, all right, clear my schedule. Like, I've done things where like, Game Informer will do extra life streams every single November, and it always is the first Saturday of November, which often coincides with the MSG pay-per-view.
This year it's the second. The
so
MSG
that's
card
good.
Is going to be the second, yeah.
But I have left that stream because the MSG pay-per-view is usually a really good card.
Mm-hmm.
And I've left that stream to go watch the pay-per-view, and then I'll come back because it's a 25-hour stream. So it's like I can just leave for like 5 hours and come back later.
You could justify having a life outside of it. That's okay.
It is, yeah, like this one is not appointment viewing. If I have nothing else going on, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, maybe I'll drop down $80 and watch these fights. Otherwise, I might be content just monitoring it on social media.
Yeah, no, I can understand that.
But like, God, there are some names on here that I just want to see. Like, again, I think Walker Kutelaba could be a fun fight. I think Aldana Chiasson could be a good showcase fight for Aldana. I think that Holland Rodriguez is going to be a very good fight. And then who knows you never know what's going to happen with a Tony Ferguson fight.
Sure. Here's the question too, because you obviously you're a little waffling on this a bit. It's hard for me to say whether I would buy this one or not. Because I'm going to anyway. Like, would I if I had a choice? Because I kind of need to do this so I can do my job, right? I don't know where I sit with that. I think I would probably lean. And I typically would just, if I, let's face it, if I had nothing else to do, if I wasn't working that night, if I wasn't covering the sport, I'd probably just go find it at like Applebee's or so, whatever the heck it is that's showing it. That's typically what I would do anyway. I often save a lot of money just going places and watching fights. But would I sit at home and say your only option is to buy it from home? Here, I might say no. The prelim card, though, let me ask you this. Are you going to make any time out of your Saturday evening to watch this prelim card? Because even this is kind of, I don't know.
No, the prelim just does very little for me. There's Chris Barnett, which is always fun.
Huggy Bear, I think that one and Jake Collier is going to be fun. That fight between the two of them, and that's a heavyweight fight between not top 10 guys that I actually want to see.
Do we have a cruiserweight bout on this card?
Technically, cruiserweight I think is 225, so they avoid it. They did the same thing. If you'll notice, so the fight you're referring to, of course, is Jalton Almeida, and I think he's a newcomer, kind of a late replacement, Anton Turcully, I believe is the name. But the Holland and Rodriguez fight that we keep talking about, which I think that's potentially fight of the night. That one is at 180. Now, yeah. They didn't do 175; they did 180, and I've noticed this before that the UFC when they'll put together these catchweights that they know about, they almost always do it off of any sort of potentially different weight class. So it's like they don't want anyone to even start sniffing. You might be talking about 175. You talking about 165? What's going on? It's like they want to be like, no, don't let them talk about it.
Yeah, but like as I was referencing though, Almeida and
Turcully, I think we'll go with that. Turcully, I believe the J is probably a soft J.
They're at a catch weight of 220, which I can't remember the last time I saw that.
That's a very strange one. I feel like there's probably like a Randy Couture fight in there or something that happened.
They probably just didn't want Almeida to come in at like 265 against a light heavyweight in Turcully.
But Almeida's not a big one either. I think he's more of a 205 pounder typically.
I don't know, man. Like I'm trying to get this kind of justified as why they would go 220 instead of something else, or just make it an outright heavyweight fight.
Like, it's very weird. It's definitely unusual and unorthodox. It's something we don't normally see, but we're gonna see it this week. that's pretty much it, right?
It looks like oh boy, it says his last weigh-in was 224, so maybe they just didn't want to give him that option to come in so much higher than
maybe it was the other guy. I actually don't know much about Turcully. Maybe he's a big heavyweight, and they said, "Well, maybe let's make it a little competitive."
Well, that's a J at the end of that name.
It is a J.
Is that Turcully then, or Turkalj? I don't know.
Well, I believe in many cultures the J would be a soft J, like yogging, from Anchorman.
Yes.
So I believe it's Turcully in that sense. He comes from his flag is Sweden.
But he's ranked in Nordic MMA.
I do not believe he's actually Swedish. Maybe I'm wrong, but
let's do this. Let's just look him up.
I don't want to take away
his nickname, the Pleasure Man.
The Pleasure Man. Okay,
I'm all on board with this guy.
I'm in.
But yeah, he was born in Sweden, fighting out of Sweden, according to his Tapology.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's Turcully. We'll find out. Actually, so you're gonna say Turculij, and I'm gonna say Turcully, and we'll find out who's right.
I have 0% confidence in mine, so let's not.
I'm actually pretty good in mine, so yeah. But yeah, I don't love these prelims either. I think this is, I mean, if we're trying to give let's say if we're trying to give guidance for our listeners at home, maybe who don't follow the UFC all the time, and I think we could probably move on from fighting after this, but if we're trying to give you guidance on how to plan your weekend with this pay-per-view, man, I don't know that you need to carve time out for these prelims, and I think you definitely have to think twice about whether you're actually going to buy this pay-per-view or not. My advice is always, if you can go somewhere, because you'll save a lot more money. Even if you're paying a $20 cover, which I hate paying covers.
Yeah.
I hate paying covers for. But, you can pay $20 and go somewhere, or you can pay $80 and stay at home, and I know which one I would do.
UFC.com/bars.
That's one of my favorites. I love UFC.com/bars.
For me, it's always just, there's like 17 Buffalo Wild Wings in your area that are showing this.
It is often that. In
what
Jersey,
else you got?
We have a lot of choices out in Jersey, sir. But there's a place I often go to when I wasn't working on Saturday nights. I would go to a place called Sidelines, which is not too far away from me, and that's our good spot. Me and my buddy would go there.
Also, I'm noticing that I'm looking at what like my options are here. Turns out my internet service provider has no idea where I live because it thinks I live on the other side of the state, basically.
Well, that's not useful.
No, but I can search by my actual zip code.
Is that a VPN related issue?
No.
Okay.
No.
Very strange.
I just have no idea. But
my VPN for work often thinks I'm in Virginia.
Weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's switch over to the gaming side.
I want to switch over gaming.
I can't talk
I'm
about what I'm
excited.
playing because it's a review game. I'll be able to talk about it next week.
Boo.
And that is also partially why I haven't really gone back and watched any, because I am just like, I have to write this review today, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing it until about 12:30 last night, trying to get through it. But yeah, so I am excited to talk about that more in the future. But what have you been playing?
I actually made a good amount of time to play some games and knock a little bit of stuff off here. I finally played, and I'm 9 years late to this one, Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry.
Yeah, so that's one of the expansions for 4?
It was the Black Flag.
Yeah,
I think it was a
4.
DLC, and then it actually ended up being like its own standalone thing either later or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I finally got to that one. I always had it in my collection. I think I bought it really cheap at one point, and I'd been looking forward to playing it because the idea of going around and just murdering a bunch of plantation owners sounds really fun. Yeah, it did, and freeing a lot of slaves. That was pretty much what I did for a really short game, super short game, like 4 or 5 hours, because like we're talking about
well, yeah, it was
DLC
like
more or less,
spin-off expansion, basically.
I didn't mind that at all, because especially when you go back and play an old style Assassin's Creed game for the first time in a very long time, when they've moved on from that formula, 4 or 5 hours was probably good. That was all I really needed when you're kind of you have to do those tailing missions, or oh god, those are those the worst missions in AAA gaming?
In AAA gaming, holy crap!
This is a tough question.
Bad. They're pretty bad.
Even if they rank, right? Like they're definitely in the conversation.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Let's bring up the rankings here. No, but I actually remember that was the reason that like everybody's like, "Oh my god, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is the best Assassin's Creed game ever," and I went and played it. And I was like, this is like 85% tailing missions, and it drives me crazy. And I remember not being super high on it. And then I liked it more when I played it again, because I reviewed it both on Xbox 360 and Xbox One. I reviewed the Xbox One version too.
I see. Okay. That was around the transition.
Oh, I like this better now that like I'm playing it again. But yeah, like, I don't know. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is a good game, not a great game in my opinion.
That's fair.
But, it's interesting you bring up that, Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry was kind of like, oh, it's that old style of Assassin's Creed game, because Ubisoft recently announced Assassin's Creed Mirage, which the rumors are it's kind of a back to basics approach.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
I don't know if that means back to basics in the sense of like the old style, or does it mean that it's just a smaller game?
It's also seemingly paying homage to past games like Altair, and maybe Ezio will make an appearance. But
my understanding from I want to say I read it on an outlet I read called Game Informer.
Never heard of them.
If I recall, it actually said that they were speculating anyway that maybe it was Basim from Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Maybe. I have no idea. Against. I mean, we're not going to learn more until the Ubisoft Forward, but like,
of course,
I think that it's been rumored for a long time it's going to be a live service style platform.
Yeah.
So my thought process is they're going to do kind of not mini games in the sense of like a Mario Party, but like
a season-ish,
smaller scope games featuring different assassins through different time periods. And like basically they give you different maps and you can go create missions. Like almost think like, this is my speculation now. This is not like,
okay, now we're just going off on your
speculation is that it's going to be like, all right, season 1 is like Italy, and you're playing as Ezio, and you're going, and they kind of give you like a couple of maps, almost like Hitman, where you have like different objectives and everything like that. Again, 100% speculation. Maybe they take some cues from that or some pages from that playbook, and they experiment with that as like the new way of doing Assassin's Creed. Because we've had these large scale Assassin's Creed games that take more cues from RPGs like Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. And I think a lot of people, myself included, were kind of turned off by Valhalla. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is my favorite Assassin's Creed game. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I tried it. I was legitimately exhausted by it because there's so much to do.
It was too long.
I never finished it.
There's a lot of. I finished it. I made a point to finish it, but I also made a point not to do certain things. I was just like, well, I'm not doing that. I don't feel like doing that because it's going to take me too long. So
it's like my approach to technology. It's like I'm not learning that.
That's fine. No, I couldn't do it. It took a long time. I definitely cleared that game. At least cleared it off my my backlog, my catalog, whatever you want to call it. Because I did like it. The thing is, there's so much to like in the game. It's just it takes forever.
Yeah,
and I can't do that anymore. So that's why I am very intrigued by Ubisoft Forward this weekend, finding out what we have here in Assassin's Creed Mirage. If it is potentially a smaller scope but similar style game, then I'd be very excited. But if they're actually going all the way back to, let's say Freedom Cry and Black Flag and all these other games where it's more, these tailing missions and all that, like, please no, I don't really want a part of that anymore. I think I could actually divorce myself from Assassin's Creed and move on.
I think they've learned their lesson from the tailing missions. At least I hope so.
You gotta hope, but I mean, for God's sake, you can never tell.
Yeah.
You just never know.
So what else have you been playing?
So I finally started playing Control. Yes. This is a weird game, dude. I'm like maybe 3 or 4 hours in, which I don't think is too far off. I think it's like a 12, 13 hour experience kind of thing, if I understand right. So I feel like I'm about a third of the way through. And it's definitely weird. I don't know how much I can go into. I think it would take too much for me to explain it. So I think we'll just assume either you know it or you're going to read about it. But man,
do you know the website How Long to Beat?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love How Long to Beat.
So yeah, they say
big supporter.
It's about 11 and a half hours in length, but if you want 100% it, it's 28 hours.
I don't know that I'm gonna take the time I'm trying not to do that as much anymore with certain games. Certain games, I'm like, man, I really want that trophy. I want that platinum trophy, but I'm moving away from that as much as I possibly can. I have to like make myself do it because I have instincts that say, oh, well, where do I find the trophy map and all these things? I'm like, no, don't do it. I gotta like tell myself don't do it. But I'm really enjoying it. It's weird. It's intense. I was playing it like during the daytime, so because it's a lot of darkness, I was getting a little glare on my TV.
Yeah.
That was kind of an issue. So I actually have to. Cause my family went to the beach one day, and I was like, well, what am I gonna do? I can play games now. This is great. I didn't have
I need
as much
one of those days
bad.
badly.
I don't know. Well, maybe when your family goes away.
My family lives away.
I know. But I had a lot of fun with that. I played a little bit of a Hitman 3 in there. My buddy was having trouble getting he's telling me he was having trouble like beating the Miami level. Like he hadn't played much of it, so he was kind of getting in. And he's like, oh, how do you do that? Like, what do you do? So I casted the game and I did like a live stream like just for him, pretty much. I mean, it was on Twitch. If you knew me on Twitch, you could follow it, but nobody else did. My Twitch is Gotham the Turtle, by the way, if you feel like finding me. But
of course it is.
I almost, yeah, of course it is. That's my PlayStation handle too. You can find me that way as well. I probably won't accept your friend request. You could like me, whatever. You can follow what I do. But yeah, I don't cast very often. But I was like, here, I'll show you how I do it. He was asking me questions throughout and everything like that. I was showing him like use the mission opportunities and that kind of thing to or mission stories, I believe they're called. So I couldn't come up with the term. Remember we were talking about the DLC, and I think it was last week. I played that DLC and I couldn't come up with the name. It's mission stories. There are no mission stories in Ambrose Island, which is disappointing.
Maybe eventually.
Maybe. Well, I doubt it at this point. Why would they add something they didn't put out when it launched?
I don't know.
But I don't know. But anyway, it was that was a good time. I always like playing Hitman, and I definitely I'm getting more the itch to like just play Hitman, like when I don't have anything to play, like just dip in and play a little Hitman because it's so much fun to go in there and play with the sandboxes of all the levels and everything. And then I play a little bit of Hot Wheels Unleashed for my children.
That was a fun game. I mean, we talked about that one in the past. We talked about all these games except
you had talked. By the way, I just want to tell you because you were asking if it had gotten like less difficult.
Yeah,
there are difficulty settings. I play on easy because my kids like to see me win.
Sure.
So I just play on easy and I win.
Do they ridicule you if you lose?
They get sad.
Aw.
Yeah. They don't cry, but they.
This is why you could never be a professional fighter.
Probably.
Because you'd be there with like Sam Alvey's 28 kids, and they'd be watching their dad lose 18 fights in a row.
Yeah, that, and I've also broken both cheekbones, so.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
I prefer not to do it again.
One last thing that I think we need to talk about on the gaming side here, Scott. You know, we've talked a lot about Ninja Turtles
Once in a while.
On the show. This report came across several different publications, but the Toy World September 2022, it's a trade publication. And here's the thing about Paramount. They were talking about like all the stuff Paramount has coming in the next year or so. And they ended the Paramount blurb with this. I'm reading this from a PDF that I found online of this trade. And it says, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are back with a new look and new movie. Paramount will be launching an extensive new range of action figures and plans to expand further at the back end of the year. Collectors are being served by nostalgic gaming releases, including an already launched new retro-themed game, Shredder's Revenge. Paramount is also planning a remaster of Konami's The Cowabunga Collection at the end of the year, which sounds like they don't really know what the Cowabunga Collection really is. So they're saying it's a remaster of the Cowabunga Collection. But then they end with this.
That sounds confusing, but yeah.
They end with this. And will launch a brand new original AAA game in 2023.
Okay.
So
yeah.
That's of interest.
It is of interest, but I'm initially very skeptical. I'm always very skeptical when it comes to AAA. The idea of any sort of, top-level Ninja Turtle game made now that's not like side-scrolling beat 'em up. Like when I heard about Shredder's Revenge, I was like over the moon. I could not wait. I'd been looking forward to the release of that game for well over a year because it was announced way before that, right? This one, having played Mutants in Manhattan, having played Out of the Shadows, some of these Ninja Turtles games that they've released over the years, 3D games, and PS3, PS4 generations, they have routinely disappointed me, and I have been burned enough to know that okay, we'll see what it's like when it comes out, but I'm always interested in that they're at least trying. So I'm going to pay attention. I don't know who's making this. We don't know who's making this game, right?
No, that's the only reason we have any knowledge of it being made at all, even if it is being made. Because again, like their framing of the remaster of the Cowabunga Collection makes me believe this is not somebody who is intimately familiar with the video game landscape.
Maybe a little disconnect.
Yeah. So that was just something I wanted to bring up. I think that, what is your, we don't need to spend too much time on this. What is your dream studio making a AAA TMNT game? Because there's one that has been like consistently thrown out there, but I think it's just because of the studio's name.
Rocksteady.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
but it has less to do with the studio's name.
I mean, I think that it would be a great fit because of like the gameplay style of like what a good Turtles game would be, but also incredibly fitting that the name is Rocksteady.
Yes, it absolutely 100% is. Like, it's just kismet, I think, in that sense. But no, I've felt this way for quite a while, that I think Rocksteady would do just a bang up job. I mean, you more or less take the formula that you have with Arkham. You create a city. You make it so that it's traversal for the Turtles to be able to like run and climb and that kind of thing above. You also have to make like an active sewer system that you can travel through. I think that in their hands, especially if you were able to, change turtles on the fly or something like that, like you press up, down, left, right on the D-pad and it changes which turtle you are or something. Man, that would be really, really. I just imagine it being so freaking sweet, dude.
It would be cool. I mean, that's the obvious answer, I think, for who would make it. But they're working on the Suicide Squad, so
I know.
I mean, maybe they have multiple teams, but
it's not happening.
I don't think it's happening.
I can't allow myself to believe it until someone says it. It'll break my heart.
So Scott,
then it's going to end up being somebody that I will be less excited for, and maybe has less of a reputation for, and then maybe they'll go out and just put out the typical what I expect out of these 3D level, placed Ninja Turtle games. Where again, Out of the Shadow, Mutants in Manhattan especially disappointed me because I actually believed. I think it was Platinum Games put that
which
one
is
out.
Hilarious because that was another studio that came to mind for me, and I was like, oh wait, they did a Ninja Turtles game.
They dropped the freaking ball. Holy hell. And I actually was a little bit excited for that one. Because I played through the Transformers game that they did, and I thought that was solid.
Devastation.
I thought they did Devastation, thank you. That was a pretty solid game. Platinum Games has made a lot of really good games. This one did not work. It didn't work at all. It was very disappointing. And I'm still a little bitter about it, I guess.
They have a wide range of quality in their games, like the
That they
Bayonetta
do.
series,
Yeah.
Nier Automata.
Yeah.
Like those are beloved. And then you have
Did they do what's it called? Vanquish?
they
them?
did.
Because I love Vanquish.
They have a lot of really great games. Like they're an incredible studio, but every once in a while
Very
they'll
up and
also
down.
do Star Fox Zero, which I maintain this has been a recurring thing that I will say on my other podcast, All Things Nintendo. Star Fox Zero, bring it to Switch, remove all the motion control BS, the second screen BS. That's a good Star Fox game. I know that's a lot more work than I'm making it seem like, but like
Sure.
Nintendo has shown nothing if not like, oh, we love bringing our underappreciated Wii U games to Switch.
Mhm.
Like their number one Switch game is a Wii U game that they brought over to Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah, that's a little different.
It is. I mean, it was also the top selling Mario Kart or top selling Wii U game. I just did an
That makes
extensive.
sense. Yeah.
I mean, it's been Mario Kart has always been at least in the top 4 selling games on any console it's on.
I buy it.
And
yeah, why not?
Often it's the number one selling game. It was the number one
the
selling
last two consoles, it sounds like.
also on Wii, aside from Wii Sports, which doesn't count because it was a pack-in game.
That does not count. Absolutely not.
But standalone games, it was the number. I just did an extensive deep dive because it was speaking of old things, 30-year anniversary of Mario Kart was just a week ago.
Okay.
And so my other podcast, I did a long deep dive into the history of Mario Kart. And it was shocking how often it is the top selling game of whatever console it's on. Like, I know it's a popular franchise, but at the same time, I was just like blown away by that. So yeah, I think that, but like, again, they've brought so many, like, almost every single like good Wii U game, like as far as like first party titles have been brought over to Switch. And like, it's like Yoshi's Woolly World and Star Fox Zero are like two of like the last remaining games. And I think those would actually do pretty well on Switch, both of those.
So all we're trying to completely, make Wii U like unnecessary. Like just make it so anybody who held on to their console, like, yeah, you have your games fine, but like you'll literally never be able to miss something that was on that console. That's what
I mean, because
I like that.
Many more people missed it. Like,
yeah,
it's the same way. Like, I don't need to keep a PS4 because they all play on PS5.
I actually still have my PS4 though.
But like, why? Like, unless you're like, I have an Xbox One still because I have an Xbox Series, but like, I have an Xbox One purely for using apps up in my living room.
The idea I think that I have is, well, eventually my kids will get big enough that they might want to play like bigger games, I guess we could say, like older kid games, and then I can give that to them. And if for some reason it's, let's say, mistreated,
it's not the end
it's
of the
not
world.
so big a loss.
But by that time, we might be on PS6 anyway.
I don't know. I mean, my son is 7, my youngest is 4.5, so they're not that far off. So before we go, I did want to ask you something. This was a holdover from last week. Just one more thing before we sign off here. Microsoft's Phil Spencer was saying something along the lines of how console exclusives will become less and less common, right? The idea that there's not going to be a more emphasis on console exclusives. And I hear that, I'm like, well, that's great. And I'm just a little skeptical, I guess, if that's really like, is that something that actually is happening? You're in the industry. Help me out here. Do you buy that?
I've had the opportunity to talk to Phil on multiple occasions, and he's always been a great guy, always a very good interview, very candid. I think that a lot of the stuff that you're seeing coming out of Microsoft is, I mean, part of it is genuine, I think, but another part of it, I think, is putting out statements to try to validate the purchase of Activision Blizzard, because there's a lot of talk that this might not be approved because of monopolistic.
They're trying to smooth the gears.
So they're saying like, oh, well, like you also saw Phil Spencer come out and say like, hey, like I called the head of PlayStation and assured him that Call of Duty will still be on PlayStation platforms for years to come.
I saw that, yeah.
And then it was like, now he's saying like, exclusives are going to play a less and less like, because like that's the concern is like, all right, well, all these games, like, we already have the Bethesda games coming exclusively to Xbox at a certain point. We already have like all these other studios that are making games that Xbox has acquired, because they've acquired so many studios over the past several years.
Yeah.
And then if you add Activision Blizzard, which again has a bunch of smaller titles, but also Call of Duty, has Overwatch, it has Diablo. It's like all these games could potentially be exclusives to Microsoft platforms at some point in the future. But and that's the concern, right? They don't want like, all right, well, this is getting closer and closer to monopolistic.
Right.
However, Xbox coming out and saying like, hey, I think that there's going to be a less and less emphasis on exclusivity. That is in hopes of warding off the criticism that these commissions are having. Like, what is it? The Federal Trade Commission, that this is going to be going to be like a monopolistic thing. And like, all these huge games that are like among the most popular games out there, like Call of Duty, Overwatch, Diablo, they're just never going to be on a PlayStation console again because Microsoft owns the rights to them.
Right.
That is them trying to fend that off. And I think eventually they might become exclusives. But like at the same time, all of my conversations with Phil Spencer have shown him to be a man that understands that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Okay.
Like, he has led Xbox from pretty much the brink of irrelevancy in the launch of the Xbox One, right? They were coming off of, hey, they won the Xbox 360 PS3 generation. That was that they were the more popular console.
Despite the red ring of death too, which is so weird. And I feel like I almost feel like their console numbers are inflated because so many people like had their console die and they had to buy a new one.
I mean, hey, I had 7 Xbox 360s.
7, Jesus Christ!
Yeah. Never had one red ring of death. Had a plethora of other problems.
That's right, you said this.
However, the Xbox 360 experience, I think, was a better gaming experience.
Mm-hmm.
Then PlayStation 4 came along, and it was a much more popular system, in large part because they learned a lot of lessons from the PS3 era, but also because Microsoft completely bungled the launch of the Xbox One. The marketing, the lead up to launch the ball was completely dropped.
Right.
And Phil Spencer took over from Don Maddock to be the head of Xbox, basically. And Don he completely screwed the pooch on that. He was used as the scapegoat as well. Like, I think there were other things at play, but like, Don was the one that was pictured with like, hey, here's the Xbox. You have to have a Kinect, and it's going to have DRM that nobody wants. And
yes.
It's going to be the entertainment console. It's called the Xbox One because it's your one-stop shop for entertainment. Oh, and also it plays games. Like, it was so poorly marketed in those early days. But then this new kind of administration came in, and Phil Spencer has done an amazing job writing the show. I wrote an opinion piece about how like Xbox has done an incredible job over the course of the Xbox One generation, listening to its fan base. It innovated in the game space with Game Pass as well, which is an incredible value. And now we see other platforms doing the same thing. Like, we see PlayStation Plus. It's expanded to be more of a Game Pass-esque service. It's not the exact same thing still, but it is expanded to be something that is more akin to a Game Pass. And we're seeing that, like, that's a pretty player-friendly method of delivering a ton of games for one manageable cost per month. And, Xbox has dialed back a lot of its DRM concerns and everything. But anyway, all that to say is Phil Spencer is a guy who understands that, like, oh, we want crossplay because, that gives people more incentive to play games with their friends. And that's what we want, because we want an industry that is healthy, because when the industry is healthy, that benefits not only us, but it also benefits PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC gamers.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, all that, from what I interpret out of that, is maybe be cautiously optimistic that is what he really means, and that they really do think that he really does think that it's going to head that way. But also, there's not like, oh yeah, it's going to be less and less, and within a few years, it's not going to be there anymore, or something like that. There's a very vague less and less, so that could mean anything, and it could just be like you suggested as well, that hey, maybe it's just to kind of smooth things over with the FTC and the purchase of Activision Blizzard. So it's
entirely possible. It could go either way, but
also, or it could be both. It could be a mix of both. So yeah, maybe I'll at least give it a little bit of like, all right, we'll see, as opposed to we'll see.
Yeah, it's you never know, like, when people send out these quotes, what the actual reasoning for it is. 'Cause it seems like he kind of did the rounds, right?
Yeah.
He was talking about like specifically about exclusives, specifically about like, all right, well, if Activision and Blizzard comes under our umbrella ultimately and it's approved, it's going to continue to appear on PlayStation consoles, like their games, for years to come. And it's like, but they also were like, he kind of positioned it more as, The real benefit for Microsoft is they'll be brought in as part of the Game Pass ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the positioning that he had, which I think is a smart strategy, right? It's a smart way to be like, look, we're going to benefit from this in ways that go beyond making these games just like, oh, well, Xbox is the only place you can play that, because that's what the FTC seems concerned about. I mean, I'm not somebody who's super embedded in this story, but it seems like that is like the concerns of like it not being approved. The acquisition is that like, oh, we don't want all these amazing games, all these very popular games to suddenly only be available on Xbox consoles.
Right.
And by Phil coming out and saying that, it seems like that might be one strategy to kind of ward that off.
I hope it's the one that benefits us the most. But you know what? That is it for us this week. If you like this show, if you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, same old places, wherever you're listening right now, of course. And while you're at it, would you kindly follow our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you've been with us, thank you so much for continuing to listen. We are continually evolving this show. We appreciate you sticking with us week to week. And if you do want to reach us with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about, or just letting us know what you're hyped about, hit us up at groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games, and we will talk to you next week.